All right, let's go ahead and get started. We might have to rearrange the agenda a little bit since we don't have a voting quorum here in person right now. But let's go ahead and call roll and see who's here, maybe on Zoom and of course here in person.
It'd be good also to see who's here as panelists in addition to the attendees, and maybe Julie Thomas could be promoted to panelist. Yeah, she is.
So Mr. McGlasson, when you're ready, please go ahead and call the roll.
Give me just a second, please. I'm
Sure.
trying to get Ms. Thomas into the meeting.
I'm here. They let me in.
Well, for some reason, it's not allowing me to enable your video.
Right, me too. It's telling me the same thing.
Okay. All right. Are you ready for roll call? Attendance?
Yes.
Munson? Thomas?
Here.
Githens?
Here.
Hamilton? Piedmont Smith?
Here.
Jones?
Here.
Swafford?
Here.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to propose a change to the agenda since we don't have a voting quorum here yet, to move the discussion of the new positions to the top of the agenda and then go from there. Does that sound agreeable?
It's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and discuss the two new positions that we placed in the 2023 operating budget. Mr. McGlasson, would you like to introduce those descriptions for us?
Certainly. As has been discussed through the budgeting process, the 2023 budget does include two new proposed positions, a waste reduction specialist and a labor support staff position for the landfill compliant household hazardous waste departments. So those are the two job descriptions included in the packet, beginning on page 56, if you're following along. And I think the waste reduction specialist is listed first. That did seem to be the position that had the most discussion previously during the budget process. But we have moved forward with producing a job description to hopefully help move that discussion along and give the board a better idea of what I guess staff, the CAC, and the executive committee have envisioned for that position in our discussions leading up to this. And then without reading the description word for word, we really, the position is, I guess, designed to work with businesses, organizations, and other large waste generators within the community to help develop waste reduction strategies to help them reduce hopefully the amount of waste that they're generating, and then beyond that, the amount of that waste material that ultimately would go to disposal. So that is the gist of what the position the intent of the position is, and you obviously have the proposed full job description in your packet, and would certainly open that up for discussion and comment, and staff would welcome any questions or comments related to that position.
Thank you, Mr. McGlasson. So just taking the waste reduction specialist position first, are there any comments or questions regarding the proposed job description?
Ms. Thomas has her hand up.
Yes, Commissioner Thomas, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I can't start my video, so you don't get to see me. I appreciate this idea of getting out into the business community and helping entities reduce waste. I guess I'm just really concerned because I don't know that there is an incentive for businesses to do this, because it will take time. to have this meeting. They pay for a bin or a dumpster, or they pay whatever they pay. That's what's the advantage to a business? Well, the advantage is you're protecting the environment, which is a great thing. But how do we know that there's demand for this kind of service, and what if there isn't? And I know there are other things listed, but that's my big concern, since that seems to be the focus of this job description. And I think I would like to wait on this another month if we could. I would just like to ask my colleagues to consider that, because I just don't know where the demand is. There should be a demand for it, but I don't know where it is.
Thank you. So I suppose part of the incentive would be if you reduce waste, then you reduce the cost to dispose of waste. So that's one incentive. I think that increasingly when people are looking for, place to work, they may be looking at the environmental footprint of the companies as well. I don't know, what do our colleagues have further reactions to what Ms. Thomas said?
Well, I think we were already planning to wait until next month to finalize this because we wanted input from the CAC, was my recollection. But also, I would hope that we could add in apartment complexes to this, because that we know is one of the prime places where we're not getting a lot of waste reduction and where we're not getting people to recycle.
And there too, I think that it may be a plus for any apartment complex seeking renters to be able to offer recycling. That I think is on a lot of people's minds when they look for a place to rent. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if those financial incentives are enough. Of course, there are the moral incentives of reducing waste to try to mitigate the impacts of climate change. But are there any specific, is it, Ms. Thomas, was this more of a general concern about the position and the existence of this position, or do you have any suggestions for changing the wording of the description?
Thank you. I don't have suggestions. I mean, I agree. There's a moral imperative to do this. I just don't know that there's a job to do if we don't have people joining in. And I think we could brainstorm some ways to make this more attractive. But I would want to do that before we hired somebody for something that we don't have a calling for at this moment. But I agree, there's a moral imperative, but I think there are ways to approach this that might be more beneficial. I also want to make sure that we're fully utilizing the staff we already have. And I have thoughts about how this could integrate with the Green Network more specifically. So I would rather just send those to Tom if I could. I know this is in our packet, but Tom and I were going to talk about it and we never did. So hopefully Tom and I can talk.
Okay, I would note that this position could also work on incentives to, help achieve the goals of waste reduction as they reach out to businesses, to, school districts, multifamily apartment managers. They would get a better sense of what incentives would work. So I think that could be rolled into this position. We could add a note about that, develop incentives for business participation or private sector participation.
Can I make?
Mr. Please.
First, I would just for the record note that Mayor Hamilton has joined us. And we now have a quorum in the room. But back to the job description. I think I guess demand for it. That I don't know, but the need I think is something that was demonstrated when we did the waste audit with Kessler Consulting and saw the amount of material going through our waste stream through the local transfer station headed for final disposal that was compostable, recyclable. So I think, that's where the need, the need to do something to try to reduce the amount of waste being generated demonstrated itself. And I think that we kind of focused in on the larger waste generators, maybe a bigger bang for the buck, and trying to develop those strategies and get some programs implemented. And as far as, the financial incentives, obviously, ultimately, you hope that if you're reducing the amount of waste going to disposal, you're saving money. By reducing your disposal cost, there's also a possibility, depending on the recycling markets, for some of those larger generators, particularly with fiber materials, that they could work directly with the waste company and possibly get some sort of a rebate if they're generating enough volume of those materials. I know there are some organizations in the community currently that do cardboard specifically, separate that out at their facility with their waste stream and send that off for recycling. Whether or not in the current market they're getting any money for that, I don't know. But I know that before the markets went bad a few years ago, there was some money to be generated by companies for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. McGlasson. Other thoughts on the draft job description? So I suppose from this point, we could take other feedback via email. If Ms. Thomas would like to go ahead and have that meeting with Mr. McGlasson about the position, and then we could hear back at the November meeting.
Yeah, as indicated in the memo on page 56, the intent of bringing those forward now was to generate discussion and get feedback. The CAC has copies of these, and I know that they plan on having them on their agenda for their meeting next Thursday to give feedback to staff, which obviously would be forwarded to the board. And the intent bringing it back to the board in November when the staff plans to present the 2023 salary ordinance for consideration, so that whether in November or December, when the board adopts the salary ordinance, the positions that the board wishes to include in 2023 can be adopted and included in that salary ordinance.
Is the salary indicated? I don't see it in the description.
Not in the job descriptions, no. I can tell you what's budgeted if you'd like.
Yeah, could you remind us? Please, what's
The waste
budgeted?
reduction specialist was budgeted for $19.50 an hour. And the support staff position was budgeted for $16.50 an hour.
Okay, so I guess I would just ask if we have a revised job description, if it could be in red line format for the November packet.
Certainly.
So that we can see
Mhm.
what has changed or what has been suggested to be changed. All right, well, let's move on to the compliance, HHW and landfill support staff position.
If I could request, I do know that Mayor Hamilton is on a bit of a time crunch. She has another meeting to get to. If I could request that the board, while he is here, address the actionable items.
Okay,
That's-
so we'll come back to the HHW and landfill support position. Yes, Mr. Hamilton, we jumped ahead to this one job description and waiting for your arrival. So we will get back to the agenda and go. First of all, I just want to note the executive committee meeting minutes are in the packet for your information from the meeting on September 2nd. Then we have board of director meeting minutes from September 8th.
I move approval of the Board of Directors meeting minutes from September 8th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from September 8th board of director meeting. Will Mr. McGlasson please call the roll?
Is there any question or comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. If there's any questions or comments on these or corrections, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, now please move on to the roll call vote.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes,
Motion passes.
very good. So, Mr. Mayor, you are here with us until what time?
11:05.
Okay. Perhaps we should go then. Sorry to mix up the agenda again, but maybe just to be safe, we should go to our 2 resolutions for approval today. Would that be all right with everybody if we skipped ahead to resolution 2211?
We do need to do the payroll and claims, so.
Oh, I'm
also-
sorry. There is a vote on the payroll and claims. Yes. Okay. All right. So let's, we'll save the cash flows for a little later, but let's go on to payroll and claims. And Ms. Dewar, can
Payroll and
you
claims.
review the amount we're approving today?
Okay, beginning on page 15 of the packet are pre-approved payroll and claims in the amount of $165,612.34. No claims were processed this week to submit to the board at today's meeting. The total amount of payroll and claims needing approval today is $165,612.34. Are there any questions on payroll and claims?
Thank you, Ms. Dewar. Are there any questions? Well, as usual, I have some. I wanted to check on the very first claim. There's just one on this claims docket report, page 17. It was a payroll error. Can you explain what happened there? So this shows a payment of $940. So was that something that?
Yes, that was my very first payroll check. The information was put in incorrectly for me to get it as a direct deposit. So the office wrote an actual check for my payroll.
I see. Okay, so we didn't pay that twice. It
No,
No.
bounced
we
back
did
from
not.
the.
No,
The bank canceled it.
the ACH information was incorrect, and so it bounced back to our account. And we,
That happens. Let me see. I thought there was one more. Oh, yes. So we have a payment on page 23, line 4, which is for the May 2022 groundwater sampling, the so-called long list at the landfill of $23,547. Is that, I was trying to look at past years to see if that was a significant increase because it seemed like a lot to me, but I couldn't find the past years. They were probably paid
Well,
earlier in the year than October.
the long list is done every third event. So it would have been about 18 months since we've last paid.
Oh, every 18 months.
But yeah, it is, and Lee can jump in if he has a more accurate figure, but it is 3,000 or 4,000 higher, and that I think just a result of the times, inflation, prices have gone up, but that previously that amount had been in the $18,000 to $20,000 range.
I'm here. I don't know how to, I don't know. This new computer, I don't know what I don't see myself on there, but the last time we did the long list was November of 2020. And where is that? And it was only the final price that we paid. Oh, doggone it, where'd it go? was not like about $2,000 more than what we paid in November 2020 for the same long list of parameter stuff. So it's in line with what we've paid in the past, given the inflation changes and the different kind of things that have gone on the past 18 months since the last time we did it.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson.
Okay.
And then my last question is about page 26, where there, line 3 or item 3, there are lots of lines for Comcast cable. And each line says monthly internet and digital voice for all departments. So I was a bit confused. Is this?
That is the departmental breakdown of that monthly phone bill. The description carried up with, we're still working with the request to itemize things like the credit card statement and stuff. So lots of things are getting itemized while we tweak our process to get that done. That description just carried down to each itemization for when that was broken down by department on that docket. But that's each line is one department's phone bill based on the number of phone lines that they have.
Okay. So it says for all departments, so you can see.
Yeah, and that's because the description just carried down into
If you
each.
could just tweet that for next time.
Yeah, well, something we're still tweaking.
Yes, Mayor Hamilton? Yes,
I
I'm
just
done.
had one question, and I may have missed it, sorry, but one of my favorite pages, you may recall, is that line graph of balances. And I know we're in transition, so it's not a big deal, but I hope we can keep that in the financial report at some point. And if it's in there, I'm sorry if I missed it, but whenever you
The
can.
cash flow chart, I apologize.
Yeah.
We omitted that this
Year
time.
over year,
Any-
great.
Our
Next time,
error, but
next time, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments about the payroll and claims? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of payroll and claims.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. McGlasson, could you please call the roll?
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes,
Swafford,
Yes,
Githens.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now let's move on to resolution 2022-11 to amend the district's approved vendor list. And let's go ahead and get a motion on the table.
so moved.
Second, sorry.
Okay. All right, so the resolution has been moved and seconded. Mr. McGlasson, could you please explain, summarize what this is?
Yeah, this, as you're hopefully aware, we do have a list of approved vendors, and those are the ones that staff is allowed to either pay pre-approved under the resolution 2022-02 passed earlier this year, or have the board chair approve in between board meetings. Only the vendors that are on that list are allowed to be paid in those two ways. We do periodically housekeeping measure for us. We change vendors periodically. Vendors change names. Some vendors we have not done any business with in some time, and so we try to clean that list up to keep it as current and relevant as we can. And that's what we're doing here. The memo on page 48 gives you a list of the vendors that we're asking to be added and the vendors that we're asking to be removed.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions regarding this resolution? All right, seeing none. Mr. McGlasson, could you please call the roll?
Swafford,
yes,
Hamilton,
Yes,
Thomas,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, let's move on to resolution 2022-12, declaration of surplus property. Go ahead and get a motion on the table to approve.
I move approval of resolution 2022-12, declaration of surplus property.
second,
Thank you. Mr. McGlasson.
As mentioned in the memo on page 53, this is something that was discussed during our budget cycle last year, prepared the 2022 budget. We have the building at the landfill that unfortunately, doing some repair work, we had a fire issue because of bird nesting in the walls, and the repairs to that building were significant, and staff looked at the utility of that building, and it really, given that the landfill is closed and we've really reduced the amount of activity going on, there was not serving much purpose for us other than storage for a few equipment items. So we did seek a appropriation in the budget for this year to have that building taken down, and we have now. Staff sought quotes from some local vendors, did receive 2 quotes to take the building down. We went with the quote we chose was $2,000 higher than the other quote, but this quote, the contractor has plans to deconstruct the building and reconstruct it at another location in Greene County. So we thought the repurposing of that building was worth spending a little extra money versus scrapping it all. More in line with our mission than just demolishing it. But now that we have that worked out with that vendor, we need to declare the building surplus before we can let it leave our possession. So that's what this resolution seeks to do. Additionally, you'll note there's also an item on there, a Volvo L45 loader. That was the remaining piece of equipment that was in that building being stored. And that is a loader that has actually been operational for a number of years. Staff has not used that in a significant amount of time, to my knowledge. And so when the building comes down, we won't have any place to store that. So we'll need to have that declared surplus. And we actually have already had a couple of parties express interest in that piece of equipment. So.
Thank you. So the Volvo will be sold?
Yes.
You expect to get some money for that?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Any other questions or comments about Resolution 2212?
I had 2 questions, actually.
Yes.
I was surprised to see that the wheel loader was listed as a net assessed value of 0, but yet you expect to be able to generate some income from it. And then also what's happening, the building has a net assessed value of close to $10,000. Are there any special hoops we have to go through with something that's valued over 5,000?
Not that legal counsel advised of. We will have money will be written off of our asset inventory as a loss. But unfortunately, with the that is the depreciated value on our asset inventory. It does not take into account the damage from the fire. The estimates that we got talking with the contractor that was interested in scrapping the building, the scrap value of the building was about half of what that assessed value was. That's strictly a function of the formula used to depreciate the assets, which is based on the expected life of the building, which I think was put in at 30 years on our asset inventory, but I'm not positive on that. The building was put up in 95 or 96, I believe. And then the same applies to the Volvo. That's based on the formula to depreciate the purchase price of that, and it's based on the expected life of the equipment, and that's already been in our possession longer than what the listed expectancy was when the vehicle or the equipment was purchased.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mayor Hamilton.
Thank you. Could you just tell us roughly what the demolition cost is for this building?
32,000.
$32,000 to
$32,000.
demolish the building.
Well, yeah. We're not demolishing it, we're deconstructing it.
But it's 30,000 to
Which
demolish.
is going to be, it was going to be 30,000 to demolish it and send it to scrap. 32,000, a little more labor intensive process to deconstruct it so that it can be reassembled elsewhere.
I guess the only other question, have you checked with, and there's no reason they may be interested, but various fire departments, they have any interest? Sometimes they're interested in a building before it gets demolished to do various things with it.
Honestly, no, we did not think to do that and have not done that. But
You could think about it.
a fire department that got lumped into the fire consolidation a few years ago did get some practice on that building 4 or 5 years
Oh, they
ago.
did. They've already practiced with that.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments about Resolution 2211? Mr. McGlasson, this amount was in our budget for this year or not?
Unfortunately, the quotes that we got, because of what's happened with the economy since the budget was prepared, they were a little higher than the appropriation that we identified when the budget was put together. But we have funds available that can cover the difference.
What was the amount we budgeted for?
20,000.
Well, good thing we have some extra funds available. All right, well, if there are no other questions, comments, we can go to a roll call vote on Resolution 2022-12.
Jones,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes,
Githens,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Swafford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
thank you. Now let us back up and do the items that do not require a vote. We already talked about payroll and claims, but other items under the controller's report include our cash flows and then our Sboa audit. So Ms. Dewar, could you please review the cash flows for us?
Yes. On page 8 of the packet is the cash flow summary statement, followed by fund-specific cash flow statements with month-end balances as of September 30 as follows. Operating, $2,453,789.57. Money market savings, $1,003,362.80. Closure bond debt, $31,330.65. Capital, $45,465.86. Landfill, post-closure, $726,005.22. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions on the cash flow report? Of course, then we have further details of the different expense and revenue lines in our packets. Any questions? All right, well, then let us move on to the Sboa audit findings. Ms. Dewar, did you want to talk about that briefly?
Sure. Beginning on page 35 of the packet is the findings report from the recently completed State Board of Accounts review of fiscal years 2018 and 2019. Please note that on the agenda, this was incorrectly identified as an audit findings report. However, Sboa only conducted a review, which is less in scope than an audit. We are pleased to report that the accountant's conclusion on page 4 of the report, page 39 of the packet, does not identify any material modifications needed to be in compliance with the prescribed basis of accounting.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
And this covered 2018 and 2019.
Yes.
Good review then. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we can move ahead then to, or move back to our new positions. We already discussed the waste reduction specialist position. We have a second new position, compliance, HHW, and landfill support staff. Mr. McGlasson, could you please summarize that job description for us?
Yeah, again, something initially discussed when we were discussing the 2023 budget proposals. And I know we followed throughout the year. I've heard Mr. Paulson's monthly reports and, the number of compliance cases, and the volume of material that they're dealing with is elevated. And it's higher than we've seen in recent years, and really has stretched the limits of the two people in that department. Really looking for assistance there. There was some question about whether or not they had enough extra work to warrant a full-time position, at which point, Mr. Long mentioned that they could probably use some assistance in the HHW department. I think we previously discussed some of the changes occurring within that industry. Our HHW department is now a little more labor involved in preparing the materials to be shipped to the vendors that process those for recycling or disposal. We're just having to do a lot of the things that they used to do when those materials came to them. So we thought between the additional labor requirements in that department and what our compliance department and landfill needed, that we could do a 40-hour position. And again, as the previously mentioned, proposed wage kind of reflects this is pretty much, a laborer position. You can see in the job description, focusing more on assisting with, roadside dumping, remediation of those roadside dumps, some assistance with personal property claims, but anticipate that Mary Beth will still continue to handle the bulk of those. There's many things at the landfill that for sometimes out of necessity to the project, but for safety reasons, if nothing else, it's always good to have two people out there instead of one. It is kind of a remote location, cell reception is spotty. If something were to happen, it might be a while before we could get somebody out there. So we thought there was a need to justify adding the position, and so that's what we've done. And again, as with the previous one, the job description is being provided for comment and feedback, and we're open to that from the board and the CAC when they review it at their meeting next week.
Thank you, Mr. McGlasson. In looking at the draft job description, are there any questions or comments from board members? And Mr. McGlasson, from our discussion at the executive committee, I understand that it'll be flexible as to how much time they spend on compliance, HHW, landfill.
Yeah, it won't necessarily be a 20 hours per week in each department. It's going to be based on need, projects coming up at that time, and the position will spend most time where it's most needed on any given week. Okay, no questions? So if you think of any revisions you'd like to suggest, please do that via email to Mr. McGlasson, and then
along with the other position, we will finalize this in November. So then let us go to the CAC report. Mr. Winia.
Good afternoon, board members. Joseph Winia here, Chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee. The primary activity for our group for the last month has been that we used some of the funding actually provided by the district to send 2 of our members to the AISWMD annual conference. Unfortunately, I was not one of them, and we have not convened since it was held, so I don't have any information to provide to you about it, but I will learn about it next week. So that can potentially be provided at the subsequent meeting. And then additionally, we've put a little more effort into keeping the rebranding process moving again and had a few more exchanges with the subcommittee to make sure that we are able to achieve that by the end of this calendar year, for which we have the funds budgeted for all of the signage. So that is all for the CAC activity report.
Thank you, Mr. Winia. Are there any questions for Mr. Winia? Seeing none, we thank you.
Thanks.
And let's move on to department reports. Mr. McGlasson.
Well, I'll follow up on Mr. Winia's, comments on the conference and note that on page 64 in my report, the second bullet point, in addition to Mr. Anley and Ms. Edwards from the CAC, myself, Joey Long, and Elisa Pokral also attended the conference. And I did, and that's in the second paragraph there, highlight some of the topics that were discussed at the conference. And I thought it was well attended. I did get a chance to speak with Mr. Manley and Ms. Edwards during the conference, and they seemed to enjoy the sessions that they went to, and thought they were glad that they came, thought they were worthwhile sessions, and got some good information to bring back. Also, we'll report that what's not in there. I did get Mr. Manley and Ms. Edwards connected with the director of the Porter County Solid Waste District, whose CAC is trying to start an initiative to go to the state legislature with a ban the ban. I guess ban the ban proposals to eliminate the state ledger stepping in and stopping localities from doing things like the bag ban that we tried to do here. So we'll see where that goes. But it was nice to hear another district frustrated with those same challenges that we have been. So then I would note for the board, the county council's public hearing on our budget was held on October the 4th. We did not, any comments, no comments from the public or from the council members were heard at that public hearing. So it's moved forward and is scheduled for adoption on October, or vote for adoption on October the 18th. And then lastly, on the second page of my report, page 65 of the packet, just want to point out Ms. Pokral had a busy month. And it's nice to see her getting back into some of the local schools and getting those programs going again. And that for anybody, any educators in the school systems, home educators or otherwise, that she still has openings available for the second semester. Would be happy to hear from people and get things scheduled.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions for Mr. McGlasson on the administration report? I wanted to ask in relation to one of the topics you listed for the Solid Waste District Conference. You said working with MS4s. So MS4 coordinators, which are usually, at least in Bloomington, that's housed in utilities. I'm trying to envision like solid waste districts working with MS4 coordinators.
Well, I mean, they're looking at stormwater quality, and people dumping their used motor oil on the ground affects stormwater. I mean, so there is some crossover there when you're dealing with potential pollutants in the stormwater system, and where solid waste districts can step in and try to eliminate or mitigate some of those possible pollution sources.
Do you have any contact with the MS4 coordinator at CBU?
I personally have not recently. I do, Ms. Pocral does attend the monthly suite stormwater education meetings that the county does. How often CBU's MS4 coordinator attends those, I don't know, but the county's MS4 coordinator is regularly at those.
Oh, right. So the county has its own MS4 coordinator? Okay. All right. Well, I mean, with this information, I don't know if our CAC members who attended work did go to that session, but that might be something for them to explore next year is meeting with the MS4 coordinators locally and seeing how they can collaborate.
Yeah, there certainly are opportunities to work together for the good of the community, and you know, it's something that, like I said, we're represented at those, and I can make an effort to reach out and see what we can do to you know, expand on beyond just attending those meetings, and if there's preventative things that we could do, and not wait until they have an issue and ask us to come clean it up.
Right. Very good. Okay, if I don't see any other questions or comments on that report, let us move on to the report on recycling and reuse, household hazardous waste, and the rural recycling centers. Joey Long.
Hi, everybody. I'll start with the recycling. So the staff has been doing maintenance on the parking lot, basically restriping all the lines, painting the curves, fixing signs that has just been weathered over the year. So we've been doing a lot of that, just making everything look nice before winter hits. The materials for the arch has been helping a guy named Frank Ledbetter for a while. We attached a letter and sent to you guys. I was over talking to them, and they've been coming in for years. So, you know, anytime something like that we can help somebody, and, you know, I get to talk to them and see what they're doing with it is great. So I like to show, you know, that we are helping a lot of different people. The Green Business Network, Global Gives has up their pickup, so they're going to be recycling more. We expect this from other businesses coming because of the holiday season. They, a lot of them that we have talked to expressed that there's going to be more packaging, more material. So we expect more commodities coming in. We've been doing cold calls and reaching out to businesses. That was a former Green Business Network of ours, which was, you know, Harmony Schools. They have expressed interest in doing recycling with us again. So that's another good thing. We keep reaching out to many different businesses, and, you know, as they express interest, we want to, you know, get them signed up and do everything we can to get them back on the program. The hazardous materials, we donated 4 polyspill containment pallets that were no longer used to us to the Indiana Household Hazardous Waste Task Force to help a couple of the other solid waste districts out that need them. That way they're not just sitting somewhere in storage. We had them donated to us. I talked to Catalan. Catalan told me they had them. I went and picked them up. We used them. They was no longer used to us, so we passed them on to the other solid waste districts, and they are greatly appreciative. And that's everything I have. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Long. I loved reading the letter from Frank Ledbetter's mother.
Yeah.
It was really touching.
Yeah, I've talked to him several times over the years. His mom, they're great. They come in once a month, and they are really appreciative for what we can help them with. And we're really appreciative of what they bring. They bring us hats and scarves, and we pass them on.
That's wonderful. It's something you wouldn't expect, you know, at a recycling center to have that kind of human connection with somebody who's reusing things that other people throw away. That's great.
Yep.
Any questions for Mr. Long? All right, seeing none, thank you. And we will move on to Mr. Paulson and the landfill and compliance report.
Yeah, hey, Lee Paulson, Landfill and Compliance Director. The report pretty much speaks for itself. It started to rain kind of in the beginning of the month, so trying to be ahead of the game for leachate treatment, turn the treatment plant on, and we made it almost a whole month. So there's not a lot of treatment numbers there, but we had it going for as long as we could. But shut it off right before the end of the month because we were fortunately running out of water. So that's not a bad thing. And then just our groundwater report was submitted. We were at the time still waiting for the result items response. So we received that back yesterday. Pretty much what we expected. Typical response to that stuff. Nothing is really changing. So we're just proceeding as we're getting ready to start our November stuff here in a couple of weeks. And just our adopt a road numbers have been a little down, but Mary Beth has had a lot of calls here in the past week, and she's actually got like 6 boxes going out tomorrow for this weekend. So next month should be quite a jump in that kind of stuff. But other than that, it's just typical stuff, running around doing the same kind of things.
All right, thank you, Mr. Paulson. So it's the lack of rain that leads to the lack of treatment of leachate on site. Is that right?
Yeah, when there's when there's less rain, there's not a lot of water flowing through the system. So what water is there has been used up by the plant life, the vegetation, and trying to keep itself green for as long as it can keep itself green. And there just isn't any extra. So there's nothing really flowing through. So we've been pretty much in a pretty good drought cycle here the past like 3-4 months. So what little rain we have gotten has been needed for the vegetation. The vegetation has used it up. So there's nothing flowing. So which isn't a bad thing. You know, last year at this time, a couple of years ago at this time, we had a couple months with 12 and 10 inches of rain for the month, and that's just overwhelming. So we're at the other end of that spectrum. So I don't imagine it's going to continue that as we're hitting October. I imagine the weather's going to start changing here pretty good, and we'll get things back up and operating, but we're riding it out as long as we can.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Paulson? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much. And I believe we have arrived at the public comment portion of the meeting. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to make a comment tonight? Please approach the podium and state your name and go ahead.
Thank you, Joseph Winia here again. I just want to say that there are 2 comments that I actually like to make. The first is to express my strong support for the waste reduction specialist position. The 5-year waste plan was adopted in September of 2021, which is just over a year ago, and it has 16 goals and objectives. And as of now, we are about halfway through one of them and have just started on 2 others. So, and about a quarter of them are of an ongoing nature that are supposed to continue for the duration of the 5-year plan, but have not yet even been started. So I think this position would provide the capacity required not only to achieve the goals, but also to provide the continuity necessary to coordinate larger efforts with other stakeholders in the community. So the second comment is to express my gratitude to this board and to the district staff for their recognition of the gravity of the degrading planetary circumstances and the role that waste plays in it and the role that the district can play in reducing it. Both last year's and this year's budgets have been allocating funds to support the 5-year plan objectives, and you have invested your time both inside meetings and out in helping to make them come to reality. So I think this is exactly the kind of direction that we need to go as a community and society. And again, I would like to just thank you for your support and your engagement as we work through these imperative initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winia. Any other public comment? Okay, if there's anybody on Zoom who would like to make a comment, you can use the raise hand function. Actually, I don't see anybody Okay. Maybe there is somebody on Zoom. If you'd like to use the raise hand function in Zoom, you can do that. All right. Well, I don't see any further public comments, so we'll come back to board members for comments. Any of the directors have comments? Okay. I can't see Ms. Jones. No comment.
No comments, sorry.
Thank you. Just couldn't see your name on the screen.
Oh.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our business for tonight or this afternoon. Thank you all very much. And I guess we can adjourn.